Hey, hello everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to this deep woo-woo episode entitled Insider Updates with Dr. Jim Willie. You can find his work at golden-jackass.com. Mr. Willie, welcome back to the show. How are you, man?
I'm doing relatively okay. Let's keep a positive spin. I want to thank everybody. I did so on the pay-per-view, but I want to thank everybody who supported me in late September and got me through a transition period that was quite difficult. I now have a new payment processor in place, tremendous disruption, a big loss of income equal to my annual salary before I began the newsletter, equal to my annual salary before the newsletter. And now I'm doing a bunch of accounting cleanup, but I'm really glad to have a new payment processor. It's working, and I'm trying to catch up. But it's not easy. The best news of all is that I'm spending a lot more time on the work. I'm not splitting off, oh shit, I got to spend 10 hours to fix this.
Right.
No, I'm working now, and I just produced the November gold report for the Tantric letter, and it focused on the finances, the financial sector, banks, the economy, the dollar. A little bit on Bitcoin, not a lot. I am now convinced, Jean-Claude, if I call you John, please forgive me, it just kind of slips. I have a focus on the dying dollar. And for those who think that the dying process takes a week or two, they're wrong. It takes several months, if not a couple of years. We're dealing with the death of a global standard in trade and reserves management. By that I mean you buy something internationally. Like I'll give a great example is Saudi Arabia bought a contract from India for IT support or medical something or other. And the contract is in dollars. International contracts tend to be in dollars because it's standardized. The other thing is that Forex reserves, and my favorite example is South Korea makes a lot of stuff. They export tremendous, and they save a lot. How do they save? Hi, Jenny. How do they save? They save in treasury bonds often. Well, those are days gone by. There's a new phenomenon right now where predominantly Asian surplus holders are getting rid of their treasury bonds and they're buying gold. They're dumping treasuries. And this is not just Asia, but the predominance is Asia because, let's face it, with Korea, Taiwan, China, Japan, even Singapore, there's a lot of export surplus. So they have to do something with the money they save. Let me just give you a quick list. It's a dozen items, 10 items or so, and they're all really kind of like obituary items for the dollar. And in my report,
I thought you were going this way with the obituary, but we'll get back to that later. Hey, Jim, hold on just a sec with your list of 10. I got to say, our pay-per-view episode is now live, and I've got so many emails from the Insider Access Pass members saying how much fun they had, because you and I apparently were rocking it, and we were laughing a lot in that last show. So thank you so much for the comments. And yes, I'm wearing my glasses today because I've been spending so much time doing what Jim Willie was just describing here that he's no longer doing, is fixing shit behind the screen. I am updating our website, as you know, and we are just ready now. We're launching today with Jim Willie's episode, the no password upgrade here. So if you guys are purchasing a pay-per-view from now on, from today, with this test, this Jim Willie episode number 8, you will no longer need an episode password. As soon as you go through your purchase, you'll be able to view instantly. I see you guys are doing it now. So far, it's running smoothly. Let me show you quickly what that looks like. So essentially, once you've gone through the payment process, you will have this box appear here, ready to go, ready to play. No more password fiddling around. The other thing you need to notice is that For future episodes also, you will see the paid button on your previous orders. So a lot of you were buying the same episode twice by mistake. This will also alleviate that. And on a final note, also, on your bill, when you receive an email confirmation, you will no longer receive passwords, but it will tell you new instant viewing access to purchase pay-per-view, no passwords required. And this is what the email is going to look like. So hopefully that works moving forward, guys. Let's get into the show. Jim, those 10 things that are on your radar right now.
They are so bad. Okay, you know, in economics, there's microeconomics. They call that the theory of the firm. The theory of an individual company, a small business, profit loss, costs and employees, insurance, deliveries, etc. Okay, the other side is macroeconomics. That's what I call national economics. You got, you know, overall employment, overall debt, overall business investment. You got a lot of things. Okay. Listen to these obituary items, because I think the king dollar is sitting on a broken throne. The king dollar is sick, depleted, missing teeth, corrupt, gutted, tarnished. Unbelievable what's happened to the dollar, especially since the planned launch of the COVID fake pandemic. I think what happened is the cabal realized that the dollar's about to die, and the hint was the blow up of the repo market. That was October of 19, by the way, 2019. So 2-3 months later came the corona bullshit. Okay, so let's get on to the items, because I believe what happened was the dollar was about to die, and the Rockefeller medical complex, which includes, let's just say, Langley and the press networks and big tech in Silicon Valley, they made some big decisions to alter the path of our nation. Oh, hi, Christine. Say hi to Bill. Okay, here is a list. The U.S. debt has risen from toward the 30 trillion mark. And the obligations are somewhere, like for pensions and Social Security, they're somewhere between 120 and maybe over 150 trillion. That's one. The federal budget is now over 50% in deficit. I remember when it was a really bad thing when the deficit was more than a couple or 4 or 5%. Now over 50% is in deficit. We have endless war as a policy, along with nation building, which is another way of saying turn a country into rubble. And the military spending is at least 20 trillion since Vietnam. What do we have for all that? Okay, the next point is the bankers have defrauded the U.S. government and the dollar system by means of counterfeit treasury bonds in the volume of trillions. That's what Building 7 was at the World Trade Center. Little known fact, a lot of counterfeit records from J.P. Morgan. I could get into that. I could speak about Building 7 for a good 5 or 10 minutes. But
what's Building 7? In the mainstream, they said only 2 buildings went down. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Jim. That's
the one that it fell by structural architectural sympathy.
Right.
Okay,
I love that one. Okay.
Well, you know, when I was cutting trees down outside Boston and in the mid to late 80s, if I cut 2 big trees down, you know, like 1.5 feet in diameter, a tree next to it usually fell in sympathy without cutting it.
Yeah,
okay, so you know we have precedent, real life precedent. Okay, moving right along. The deep state dirty businesses, also known as independent silos, each run as dollar-based criminal enterprises such as trafficking of drugs, kids, women, and arms. Okay, that's actually, it's so funny. That's actually a point to sustain the dollar a little while longer, because these independent silos of Langley, the managers want to keep it going. Okay, all financial markets based upon the dollar are rigged talking about the bond market, the Forex market, currencies, the stock market, junk bond market, mortgage bond market, money market. They're all rigged. And, here's just a tremendous example. The TIPS, the Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. It was about, I don't know exactly, a year or two before Lehman, like 2005, I heard that the Fed was intervening to buy TIPS. They wanted to push the TIPS yield down to confirm that there wasn't much price inflation. I mean, you could write a book about the lunacy here. Okay, moving right along. And the management of the financial markets is done by the Exchange Stabilization Fund, run by the Department of Treasury.
Yeah, don't talk about that. That's a bad word here on YouTube.
Okay, all right. Which is loaded with wonderful people.
Right.
Okay, moving
They do
along.
God's work there, but they don't exist. Jim.
Right. And they took all the Saudi bonds. But that's okay. They're just dirty Arabs. Okay, sorry. All custodians, stewards, and managers of the King Dollar are members of the Brethren, which is the banker sector, the big bank sector.
Mm-hmm.
Next, the trade deficit exceeds $1 trillion annually following the generational discharge of the U.S. industry. Yeah, let's send the industry to the Pacific Rim. That was the battle cry of the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
70s. Hi, Ashley. You're a fox. When they did that in the late 70s and early 80s, first was Intel. I thought, what a bad idea. And remember back then, if you're old enough, I'm plenty old enough now. I just turned 69 a while back, and I try to remain young in action and voice and energy and bike riding. But back then they said, there's so much pollution in the United States. We're gonna create a clean economy that's financially driven.
Mm-hmm.
And we also had a lot of environmental protection fines to increase the cost of American industry. And that pushed them out of the country. Okay. As a result,
69, you say? Sorry.
I'm 69 and a half. Yeah. As a result of pushing in the industry out, we accumulated more debt. And by accumulating more debt, we needed more foreigners to buy the treasury bond debt, which meant that as we discharged industry, we forcibly accelerated the process. Mm-hmm. It was a feeder loop where we needed even more external dollars floating around to buy our debt. It was a brilliant move by the Rockefellers to force an economic capital drain swirling around into the sewer, which the United States economy has become. Okay, the last point is that payment for officials in the United States dollars terms for the people in the deep state who are no longer loyal to the United States population. That's a pretty nasty charge, that last one, because remember that China had at one point about 7 years ago, they had $3 trillion in Forex reserves. And I was very concerned back then that they were going to end up buying large tracts of our economy. And they started by buying commercial buildings. They followed that up by buying into corporations, getting into intellectual property, and then they bought our government. Mm-hmm. Didn't work out well. And it never does when you have foreigners owning your debt. The majority, over 50%, never works out well. Never. And we're seeing now the degradation of the economy and the disloyalty of our leadership as a result I believe, largely of that annual trade deficit and debt ownership by foreigners. Okay, this is not going to end well. And usually in such cases, there's an explosion. And what I'm expecting, Jean-Claude, is, and we've only seen the early part of it, but Rob Kirby put it quite well. The financial markets are under control. They're rigged. So there's a decision to be made. Do we melt up with a blow off top, or do we allow a collapse?
Right.
And his conclusion is, well, they always pick hyperinflate, print money, threaten to pay back the debt with cheaper dollars, print more money, and the elite can siphon off a quarter of it like they have with COVID money, COVID funds. A good quarter of it has been stolen. And we're talking about a few trillion. So we're talking about maybe close to $1 trillion stolen. So they like this. This is fun for them. They're managing over a crisis, and they got complete carte blanche. That's French, by the way, Jean-Claude, to print money and patch everything. And
there was an article in Zero Hedge the other day, and they were changing the nomenclature, and the haves are now the have-yachts. Yeah, because of all of these games. You're absolutely right. Guys, if you haven't seen this Rob Kirby interview, go and check it out.
Oh, I got a funny joke about yachts. I got into an argument with Jim Paplava in San Diego. Yeah. He's a manager of financialsense.com. We got into an argument. It was right after it was moving in toward the election for Baby Bush in 2004, the re-election. Hi, Ronnie, you're a fox. And I made a joke with Jim Paplava. I said the tax breaks given to the wealthy by the Republicans. At that time, the Republicans were not so great. They weren't the patriots. They were kind of like robber barons, and let's print a lot of money because the Republican bankers can take it. But anyway, I made a joke with Jim Paplava. I said, there's a lot of misused money. It was created to stimulate the economy, and there's been a lot of stimulus funding. But a lot of wealthy people simply went out and bought a second boat. Mm-hmm. And Jim Paplava said, I just bought a second boat. And I said, well, then you qualify as a dirty Republican. And he kicked me off at the show for the argument that we had on the air. But he can eat a yard of my shit. Let's move on here. I tell you, I got a really good November newsletter, and it's the first time in a little while that I could really dedicate some good time and produce it well, and do the background reading and do some conversations to verify some things on the phone, and read this and read that and listen to this video. And Rob Kirby is so good. He had his own incident 2 years ago, but he's okay now, and he says he's stronger than ever. But, we've got a lot going on.
He thinks it's because of his talking about the ESF, by the way. He told me that the other day on the screen too. Partly that, some other things, but mostly that they really didn't like when he started getting
it's that and the background information on derivatives and how they lied about various things, like, there's a lot of money in 2009, a lot of money moving into treasuries. No, there wasn't. There was a lot of derivatives, and the evidence was Morgan Stanley on the OCC report, Office of the Comptroller and the Currency. Rob mentions the OCC often. It's a great source of dirty information. It's public, but how many people do you know who ever looked at a single page of the OCC report? Okay, Jean-Claude, we got some really nasty things going on in the Fed right now. We got an extension of the debt limit to December 15. We had a challenge to Jerome Powell. By the way, Jerome Powell is an agent from BlackRock. And people need to understand, they really need to understand, that Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street own approximately a third of all the financial assets. So BlackRock, which used to be involved 6 or 8 years ago in buying up Arizona property that was foreclosed, residential. They got into the private equity business, and then they got really busy with their mergers and acquisitions. And now it is rather safe to say that BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are making decisions for corporate America on health rules and business type restrictions. That's how concentrated it is. Mm-hmm. And they're not stopping. I've got a piece on BlackRock in my November report. They have a staggering increase in assets under management, which has its own acronym now, AUM. Okay, but apparently the BlackRock agent, Jerome Powell, will continue. And he's got a woman named Lael Brainard. She's the, think of it as the vice president of the Fed, the vice chair. She will be keeping him honest because, and this is all in my report, I'm just going to breeze through a couple of big points. We got a tremendous growth in money supply. It's doubled in the last year and a half or so. But the productivity is down by, I don't know exactly. It's hard to say, by 20 or 30% productivity. There's something called money velocity, Jean-Claude. It's really quite interesting. You've got so much money in the economy, but if everybody is really busy and everybody invests and everybody is successful with businesses and they hire and they produce and they sell, the velocity is really quick. Mm-hmm. It just makes 2-3 round trips per year. That's called money velocity. But if you got a really slow economy that's not doing much because of all the fake pandemic bullshit, then the velocity is really slow. Mm-hmm. And right now, our velocity is, I have to put on these are magnifying glasses. I do not have astigmatism. The productivity is down by, I can't quite tell. I'm sorry. I don't know which scale is what. Oh, red scale. Okay, black. It's down by about 30%. 30% in the last 2 years is the velocity is down. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you can see it. You see it in more unemployed people. They're given a big incentive to quit their jobs, and they can blame it on, I'm afraid of the COVID. I'm afraid of that non-existent virus, which has never been isolated, by the way. And we move right along.
But you just said productivity was down, but in his last town hall, Mr. B here was saying that prices were going up because productivity was going faster and faster, and there was higher and higher demand for products.
Liar.
I don't understand what you're saying, Jim.
He's called a liar.
You seem to be out in left field on this one, Jim. You're not making any sense at all.
Well, I'm afraid Powell is out in much farther than left field. He's way out in the outhouse behind the bullpen where the relief pitchers take a shit.
I think he's smelling that from over there. Look at his face. Move.
Okay, that's the look of somebody who's been called a liar. What we have here is a failure to communicate. Cool hand, Luke. We've got the supply chain disruption, so things are moving slower. Yeah. We got California banning all pre-2015 trucks from loading and unloading at the docks. And by the way, that's about 90% of the trucks. Anything that's before that is banned. It's about 90% of the trucks. Mm-hmm. So the Chinese leaders who pay the California leaders have instituted that green energy rule. Now, Jerome Powell, did you address that? I don't think so. Let's move right along because he is a stinking, filthy, corrupt liar. But if you love free money, if you love the printing press and inflation, he's your man. Oh man, is he ever your man? Because he's your man. Oh, yeah. He is directing that spigot to BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. He's not directing it to households. Okay, there's a lot going on. I have a chart. It's a busy chart, but let me just comment on it, because what we have now.
Did you want to email it to me for me to put up on the screen, or no?
No, it's too messy.
Okay.
It took me an hour and a half to write the 3 paragraphs, because I had to make sense. Let me just make a couple quick points.
Okay.
We've got about 15% price inflation right now. That's according to John Williams at the Shadow Government Stats. Officially, it says 5 or 5.5 or something nonsensical. And for the longest time, I've doubled and tripled the official number to enter the realm of reality. Okay, they lie about unemployment, they lie about economic growth, they lie about price inflation. What we have now is 15% price inflation and 1% interest rates. Let that sink in. That is a formula. If you continue to print money, it's a formula for massive, reckless speculation and hoarding of the spigot by the wealthy who are in control. What it means is that we're going to have a blow-off top. I don't know how long it's going to last. It could be 2 more months. It could be another 18 months, could be 10 months. But it is the power force dynamic for creating the blow-off top. We're overpriced in stocks. We got a recession that's vicious. We got low earnings. And we got ridiculous price earnings valuations of stocks. And the real rate of interest, which is the bond yield minus inflation, is over minus 10%. That means savers are being brutalized. They've got a bunch of savings. They got them in bonds. Their prices are going up every day for everything they buy, and they earn dog shit for bond yield. Okay, this usually is tremendous for the gold price and silver price. What we got now is that we're working hard to make this coiled spring stronger and tighter every year. Now, Rob Kirby said something that kind of surprised me. I thought he was going to say the suppression is going to continue until we're dead and buried, but he believes that it's going to break. He believes that they're going to lose control, that the blow-off top is going to, he didn't quite say it, but I think it's going to leak into the gold market at the same time the Basel III rules are kicking in. And this is going to be
confluence of events there. Yeah.
There's so many confluence of events. And you know, you get a clue, and Alistair McLeod pointed this out. Something like 40 or 50,000 fewer short contracts for December in gold. They're covering their shorts. And Rob Kirby gave a tremendous description down memory lane in 05 and 06 with the death and kill of Bear Stearns. They were long gold, so they were killed as soon as they got in trouble with the mortgage bonds. They were long gold, and JP Morgan grabbed it to offset their heavy short gold exposure. It was a crime scene. Okay, moving right along. Jim Grant of Grant's Interest Rate Observer, he pointed out with a nice little quote, "The Fed reminds me of a speculator on the wrong side of the market." Now, let's focus on the wrong side. If Goldman Sachs was surprised on that early November day, I think it was November 5, when $2.6 trillion of option notional value was put on the books, 2.6 trillion on a single day. If Goldman Sachs was surprised by that, then Goldman Sachs was not part of that. Let that sink in. If they were part of it, they wouldn't have been surprised. But they reported on it because other people are making bets, big bets of giant market movements, and you don't know whether it's up or down. I think we're going to have an extraordinary event where a lot of people are short and a lot of people are long, and we enter volatility like you have never seen in your lifetime. Like the Dow Jones going up 8 or 10,000 in a single week, and then up 15,000 the next week, and making moves that you typically don't see for a 2-year period, and they're going to make it in a week. That's what that option giant it's a giant allocation of bets on the table, and we don't know which side they're on. I think it's going to cause some volatility. A lot of scared money is going to fly into gold and silver, and that volatility and disruption of the financial markets could be the trigger, along with the Basel III, where for a quick reminder related to gold, Basel III says that the accounting on the books for big banks can call gold a tier 1 asset. That's a very big development because it never used to be. And also, because of that, it's going to be like the tide goes out and a lot of fat men are caught in the shallow water without a bathing suit, and their testicular region is going to be hanging real low and in full view. By that, I mean a lot of big money is going to be exposed. A lot of big hedge funds, managed funds are going to be exposed. We have been saying for the longest time, we've got gold, but we don't. All we got is paper bullshit. Then they're going to run out and buy gold so they don't lose their best clients. That's a consequence of Basel III, and it's an exciting consequence. I'm looking forward to that, Jean-Claude.
Yeah, it seems it's going to put some credibility, I guess, back into the system here. And what you just mentioned about these extreme volatilities, I wonder if that's what perhaps Cliff High was picking up in the WebBot data way back when. He had this particular phrase that we would get to this point of panic to own. And I'm wondering if the setup you're describing here will push everybody into panic to own, not just the people short covering, but also the general mom and pop who realize that perhaps this is at the end of the stage here and they need to get into physical.
They're going to make it difficult for the paper gamers. We've got gold, but it's all paper. We've got the GLD, but it's all bullshit. The GLD is not backed by gold. It is backed by promises, and they're empty. The GLD has a fund, and I believe this is a great point by my colleague Euroraj, who is a very vital strategic analyst in the U.S. financial industry right now. He made the point that the GLD inventory of gold is probably less than what he called gold in motion. Okay, if you think that GLD is a safe place to have gold ownership and a good exposure, I think they're going to be exposed as not having dog shit for gold, because the gold in motion is significant. Think of gold in motion as, okay, you got all these different miners around the world. They're under contract and they're delivering gold, but it takes a long time to get there to the market, to the vaults for the big banks running the COMEX. It's in motion. It's on the way. It's on a plane right now, but it's a whole lot cheaper to do it by boat. So it takes longer. Then it's on train. Then it's on blindado. What do you call them? It's funny. I know the Spanish word. Security trucks.
They've been lying about this in motions for so long, and even what's the word? Hypothecating what's in motion, that now what's on motion really means what's on the sluice box coming out of the ground. That's on motion right now. That's how far back they're going. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really quite dangerous. Okay, I believe we're about to see a currency collapse. When you start to see shortages, you start to see money chasing scarce product, scarce service. I got one client told me, Jim, it's amazing. The price of a rented car just tripled. Tripled. I've only done rented cars, a dozen times in my life on business trips when I was working for Digital Equipment Corp. I went and made a lot of trips to Palo Alto. I volunteered to be the Palo Alto representative for a while, and that earned me 3 trips a year to Silicon Valley. I really liked Palo Alto.
You were partying with the boys pretty hard there back then.
No, I didn't party. I didn't party at all. I did my work, and then I went out for a really good meal, like a big chef salad, and I kept the rest of the per diem. They'd give me like $40 a day, $35 a day. I didn't spend it all. I went to a cheap bed and breakfast with a nice lady running it. I like mingling. But I did have a couple of colleagues. One was from Alcoholics Anonymous, and he moved out to Silicon Valley to Mountain View, and we met and had a meal. But anyway.
Hey, wait. If you were messing with the per diems, why were you renting a car? You should have used your personal car, claimed the mileage.
No, I was in Palo Alto. I lived in Boston.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Yeah.
I was on the road. It was a business trip.
Okay.
I go on another trip to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I went another trip to Dallas for focus groups. These were trips. To get around, I rented a car. Or sometimes I just took a taxi because it was all local downtown. I didn't rent a car. If I was like in downtown Chicago, I didn't rent a car. Okay, we're going to have a currency collapse. We're printing money like crazy. Remember the Ponzi principles. Jean-Claude, you've got to accelerate the money supply just to stay even. Mm-hmm. And they're going to make accidents. They're going to misjudge and say, well, we printed 300 billion last month. Let's print 400 billion this month. And it won't be enough. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to see a currency collapse because confidence in the system is going to erode. And it's going to result in what Rob Kirby called, I don't know what the adjective was that he called it, a whopping big up days. He had a description. Anyway, there was a phrase he used.
Okay.
I can't think of it. I should do a search while I'm looking at my report on a half screen and yours on a half screen. But anyway, moving right along.
Well, let me just ask you a question here, because a lot of people were commenting on this the other day, and I wonder, with your report, how does this tie into Turkey? What's going on with Turkey right now? We're seeing it crash, and we've seen, like, just the other day, prices of wine in one day went up 15%, and I'm like, oh mon Dieu, c'est horrible, the wine and cheese folks out there. Where does Turkey fit into all this? Is it a precursor to what we're about to live here in the States, or is this a standalone kind of weird political thing between NATO here? What do you see in Turkey? And can we actually talk about that on the show here?
I can talk on it. I can keep it as sanitized as I want.
Okay, let's give it a try.
There's a bad interpretation and a good interpretation. A palatable coffee table interpretation, which goes like this. Turkey is out of favor with NATO. So we didn't like a lot of things that they did, cozying up to Russia, the Turk Stream gas pipeline for Gazprom, in inviting a lot of Russian tourists to come for discounted hotels. We didn't like what Turkey did, and Turkey kind of crossed us. So we unleashed our Wall Street and London bankers to short their currency and remove the support, like for wealthy clients buying the Turkish lira. They stopped doing that. So they entered a free fall, and their economy was pretty crappy. So they didn't get a lot of a lot of export revenue. Mm-hmm. And there are controversies for problems internally, which the West, U.S. and London, publicized as perhaps dangerous for tourists. So that eliminated a lot of their tourism revenue.
Hmm.
And the result was they had big deficits and had to raise interest rates. But they didn't want to raise their interest rates too much to damage their own economy. And they didn't raise it enough to reach an equilibrium, so they entered a bit of a free fall.
So they were ripe for this kind of attack.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. They're not a strong economy anyway.
Right.
They might have been 100 years ago a center of Islam, but hey, those days are long gone. I've only known a couple of Turks in my life, and one was a foxy girl in my last job. Wow, was she pretty. Here's the bad interpretation, John, and I'm going to try to, sugarcoat it a little bit so it's not, pure dog shit nuggets.
Are you getting into the Incirlik Air Force Base and perhaps the lack of revenues there? Yeah, that's a tough one.
Uh-huh. Incirlik became a tough area where, incredibly, even though Turkey booted us out, we still control about a quarter of the Air Force Base because we got a fence and we got guns. Hey, it's kind of funny. It reminds me of Guantanamo. We got kicked out of Cuba, but we maintained control of the naval base because we had a fence and we had guns. Yep. Okay, so Incirlik used to be a very big heroin distribution center for NATO. And for those who understand narcotics trafficking, there's a big benefit. And the benefit usually supports your currency. I mean, the bad side is a much shorter story. I gave you a long positive side, but the dark side is much simpler. They lost a lot of narcotic money laundering fees. Mm-hmm. And they can't support their currency as well, while all the other stuff is going on.
Right.
They don't have enough ammunition financially to support their currency.
Okay, let's move along. I think that's enough for Turkey.
Yep. Okay, where do you want to go? Because I finished
we talked about the supply chain, but you wanted to talk about the banks also. I had that on the notes. What specifically do you see here? We're seeing some banks shut down, some other banks eating some other banks. We keep seeing how low can Fargo go. What's the restructuring all about here in North America with these banks? Do you want to get into that?
Oh boy, it's a hard one. I'll be honest, I didn't cover that in my November report nor the previous report, but I'm on that story in a general sense.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of trouble right now in the bond market because interest rates are 15% too low. Now, let that sink in again. I keep saying that these are important points. Mm-hmm. The bond market is artificially high for value, artificially low for bond yield. That plays havoc with bond derivatives. And what I suspect is going on with these big banks is they might be merging in order to share the derivative book risk, principally on the bonds, because the bonds are way out of whack versus the reality of inflation. Now, Jerome Powell said that we've got transitory price inflation. He said we got strong growth, which is pushing up prices. That's bullshit. We don't have strong growth at all. And the problem is we're getting exposure of the inflation, which generally reflects pressure on the bond market. Okay, let me comment something about Fargo because Laura here wants that to be known, and I've commented on this before, and it's not a new point. Wells Fargo is not a Wall Street bank, but they're tied at the hip with the Wall Street banks for a very special reason. They're the conduit for Chinese money. The Chinese go directly to Wells Fargo, deposit a bunch of bonds, borrow 10 times that amount, and go on shopping sprees to buy commercial property, not just in California, but in the entire United States. Commercial property in big urban centers like Dallas, Chicago, Salt Lake City, San Diego, Detroit, Boise, Idaho, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philly. They're buying. They own a third of all the commercial property in big urban centers for the top 20 to 30 cities. Okay, so Wells Fargo, I think, is being targeted by the White Alliance and the U.S. military to stop this inflow of Chinese money, which might be used indirectly somehow to get into the hands of U.S. government and state government leaders to do the wrong thing for the population, like interfere with an election. Okay.
So what you're saying, are you saying that all these fake accounts that were being created, turned a blind eye to, this is tied into moving this Chinese money into the system here to buy property in the States? Is that part of what they were doing?
It could be. But remember that fake bank accounts could also receive a Fannie Mae loan.
Uh-huh.
Okay, when you get a fake account, you can do a lot of things with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can create a commercial loan and borrow a bunch of JP Morgan money directly from the Fed. You can make up 100 different fake people all looking for several $1 million in commercial loans. You can do a lot. You can do a tremendous amount. I'm not talking about nickel and dime stuff like Social Security deposits. I'm talking about big commercial loans, big Fannie Mae loans, and a lot of other things that can be fraudulently executed with the help of Wall Street banks. The banks in 2001 were the center of this national movement that really like Mussolini, for example. Right now, we've got a national movement that really likes the medical folks. They're in charge. And maybe not for much longer. I don't know where you want to go right now, Jean-Claude. I don't think we have a lot of time.
There is a question in the chat. Chris was asking you, hey, JC, ask Jim about EU contact Max. What about Max? Is there anything new from Max?
I'm sorry to say that he's trying to survive. He underwent a series of attacks. We're in contact once in a while, but not a lot. He was a great source of information for a couple of months, and he had some things blocked, and he had his company interfered with, and he had some people that he knew murdered.
Wow.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, that's difficult.
I haven't been in touch with him for a few months, sorry to say.
Okay. Before we go, we got about 5 minutes left. Let the audience know what your thoughts are. You and I had done a report maybe 4 or 5 months ago where you had explained to the audience all of these events that needed to happen for us to eventually see silver and gold break loose. How close are we on that list of events here to maybe seeing that come to fruition? Do you have more events on your calendar that you're hoping to see? You talked about that top 10 list at the beginning of the show here. These are all events.
Those are King Dollar points. Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of every single one of them. That's why they're on the list. As for climax, I think a few of them are actually near a climax. For instance, the trade deficit is huge. It's over $1 trillion a year. And as a result, the dollar is going to be rejected. For what? For trade. Okay, one of the reasons the California ships are blocked offshore is that they want gold for the contents of their ships. They don't want the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're printing Weimar style treasury bills. We're covering our debt like Zimbabwe did with treasury bills. We're printing. That's Weimar. So the ship owners are saying, we want gold. And we're saying, shove it up your ass. We got paper. And they say, we don't want it. We're sitting right here until we get gold. It's a lot more complicated than that. I have an entire chapter on the logjam of the shipping industry. And part of it has to do with the banning of pre-2015 trucks. Part of it has to do with child trafficking that's on the ships. Part of it has to do with not accepting the dollar. Part of it has to do with China trying to sabotage our supply chain and doing various things, nefarious and not nefarious. Pardon me, my nose itches when I talk a lot.
Speaking of, you just mentioned the word climax. Speaking of climax, Jim, what's going on with these girls in Australia?
Well, they want legitimate penises. If you were a woman, would you want spike protein shoved up your vagina? I give a lot of credit to these gals.
Yep.
It's Sheila #1 and Sheila #2.
Yeah. They're unapologetic. They know what they want. And
they know what they want, and you know, they're probably scared of being infected.
Yeah.
I mean, if you rub shoulders with a guy who's got the vaccine and is emitting through breath and touch spike proteins, the last thing you want to do is rip his shorts off and have him enter the golden garden. Doesn't really register for smart women. If you're an absolute moron, then you're going to be afraid of the unvaxxed. I got a quick, I don't know if I should go here.
We have 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes, Jim. If you want
good.
to take
We still have 5 minutes. God,
Yeah.
the time is frozen. I have a gold chart, and my main talking points on it are we have Basel III rules about to kick in with a great deal of awareness and lead time. We have a Weimar backdrop with tremendous printing of money. We have price inflation in a big way that is now recognized and cannot be denied. And when those bankers try to deny, they look really silly. We have trillions of dollars that's been created in the name of the COVID bullshit. We've got financial market valuations that make no sense. And by the way, the price-earning ratio right now is triple of anything ever seen before. We've got a pretty good base built in the 1700s with an upward tilt. And I think the price wants to go a lot higher, and they're just waiting for the bankers to get out of their way with their naked shorts that they're covering.
Yeah.
Okay, but in the list, they're all relevant. That's why they're on my list of the dollar threats. You can't have 50% deficit on your budget. You can't do that. The only way to repair that is to print money like Zimbabwe, and then you become the Zimbabwe dollar. But the problem is, it's all Forex currencies. When I get people who say to me, and they're well-meaning, and some of them are very bright people, they say, Jim, the dollar's going to take a big hit. I say, versus what? The euro? The British pound? The yen? Are you kidding me? The Swissy? Are you kidding me? No, it's going to take a big hit versus gold and silver. As the dollar falls, all currencies in the Forex system fall. And, be careful of the word fall. As the dollar loses its prestige, as it loses its confidence, borne by others. So does all the other currencies in the Forex. The entire Forex complex loses its prestige, loses the confidence of its holders. And what do? They get rid of it like the Asians are doing. They get rid of the treasuries and start buying gold.
Yeah.
This is not complicated. I try to make it 10 points so that they don't have to get really obscure. They're 10 simple points. We're broke. We lack industry. Our deficits are huge. We're printing too much money. We got price inflation. We got shortages. It's all broken. And they're all happening at the same time. I truly believe.
At the same time, we're seeing tightness in supply here in the physical gold and silver market. I got Andy Scheckman here who was giving me, for the first time here, the 1,000 ounce COMEX bars here on sale at 165 over spot. These are the Royal Canadian Mint bars. Absolutely amazing. They're bigger and bigger players now, making bigger and bigger orders frantically here in the last month or two, Andy was saying. So now they're up there.
And Rob Kirby said that you're not going to be able to find it. And Cliff High said you're not going to be able to find it. We're going to be going from a situation like we've seen the last few years, suddenly, where you can't find supply. I want to buy, for instance, I want to buy $100,000 worth of silver coins. I want a few boxes. You can't find it.
Yep. Unobtainium.
You can't find it now. And you can if you pay up. If you pay way over spot. But pretty soon, you're not going to be able to find it way over spot. And
Guys, give it a try here. This is the discounts offered to the Beyond Mystic audience. It's beyondmystic.net/silver. Take it while they last. Jim, I got a last question for you. I saw a comment from Cliff earlier, and he was positing an opinion, and I want to have your take on it. Do you think that perhaps the inflows of money and these fake creation of accounts here so that the Chinese can buy property in the States is actually being encouraged, not necessarily for nefarious means, but for the fact that perhaps in 2022 or 2023, we would eventually pass a bill, a reparation bill against this COVID bullshit in China, and we would seize all of that property. Does that make sense, maybe? What do you think?
It could be, but I think you have to put your brainstem into more basics.
Okay.
That's a 2-3 step process. If the Chinese capture property in the United States in the next few months, they're going to do a very good job with Wall Street help to conceal the owners. They're going to be local companies that are owned by a conglomerate. And if you do a lot of research, you can find the Chinese owner after a month and a half of research. They're really good at covering their tracks. They've gotten a lot of consulting aid and education from Wall Street and how to create offshore firms, limited partnerships. I don't buy that. I think the U.S. military is trying to obstruct Wells Fargo now because of the favorite Chinese bank. And remember, Wells Fargo committed some criminal deeds just a year or two ago with a lot of phony credit card creation to make bonuses for executives for accounts that didn't exist. They did a lot of not high-level nefarious things, high-volume, low-level nefarious things.
So what you're saying is it could be complicated with the reparations bill to actually put our hands back on these titles, because who knows where these titles are going to be of this property. It's complicated.
And who's writing these bills? Are they on the Chinese payroll? I mean, come on.
Yeah, at this point you wouldn't think that it's the pretended.
I don't think that's. I don't think it's. Yeah. There could be something to that, but I think it's probably small.
Okay.
I think we're going to see some unexpected events, not alone and not in one sector. And they're going to happen at once, and people are going to say, whoa, it's breaking all over. What the hell's going on? And then you see the rush into gold, and nobody can find any.
Right. Well, speaking of that, let me maybe ask Julianne's question for you. How much silver should we have, Jim? My answer to that is as much as you can, really. But what would you answer
Well,
at this point, Jim, at this stage in the game?
I don't know. I like to focus on what the price of silver is. If you have to pay up with big premium, that means the price is a lot higher in reality than the posted price.
Yeah.
And the theft will come if you try to sell it, because you won't be getting your premium back.
Yeah.
How much silver should you own? I'll just throw something out there. A couple of years' salary. It's hard to answer. It's hard to answer questions like that.
Yeah.
Make your silver holdings at least as much as your home is worth. Or the majority part of what your home is worth. A lot of people who are selling properties right now are the beneficiaries of the Weimar phenomenon. And I got to say that a year ago, my father died and his home was sold. And I told my sister, I think it's going to get X, because that's what our neighbors 2 doors up, whose name began with an R, that's what they got. And they got 105,000 more than my expectation. Jean-Claude, we're in a Weimar climate right now. This is very hard to forecast. It's easier to analyze, but you can't put calendar dates on it. One of my common complaints that I get from clients is, Jim, you always talk about the events. I said, yeah, I know. There are delays on the events for more criminality, more wars, more seizures, more murders. What am I going to do? Forecast them too? No, we're dealing with an event schedule that General Schwarzkopf explained in 1991. It's a reality. When we get broken elements in my top 10 list, you will see gold move, and move hard and fast. I don't know when that's going to be, but look at all the pressures. We're still printing money. We still got deficits. We're still seeing shortages. I think what we're going to soon see is a backtracking by leadership to try to repair the supply chain. Because they're going to be afraid of the masses with torches and pitchforks. I have a joke, Jean-Claude, I'll close with this. I have a joke that I say, and I've said it probably to 100 to 150 clients. Nothing will change until the leaders are lynched.
It's just a joke. We don't mean it, of course.
Oh, no, I would hate to see that happen.
Let them eat cake. Yeah, Marie Antoinette and the guillotines. That, folks, was our edition of Jim Willie. Well, somewhat censored. If you guys want to see the uncensored show, please go check out on our pay-per-view.
But I don't use the F word in the uncensored. I want people to know that. Only you did. You've got a potty mouth.
No, I don't. It's the French vocabulary.
I know. Sacré bleu.
Sacré bleu. Carte blanche.
Sorry, I broke French on you.
That's French, by the way. Carte blanche. Somebody pulled you on that. That was a good one. All right, folks. Please do go and check out the Hat Trick letter for the month of November here, available on golden-jackass.com. You can also support Jim here by donating directly to the website, using a consult button as well if you want to talk one-on-one with Jim and explore some of the opportunities for you here to navigate this crazy financial market we find ourselves in. And of course, if you're a little bit, if your pockets are a little bit deeper, you can also try the sponsor button and get some advertising on his website. So again, that's golden-jackass.com. That was the Insider Updates with Dr. Jim Willie. And please do go and check out our last episode here, number 8 of Jim Willie Uncensored on our pay-per-view. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic. I love you guys. Have a great weekend. And if you didn't hear me yesterday, happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys. Take care, guys. Au revoir.
Au reservoir.